The goal of this little chat today is to showcase the findings of a desktop analysis that informed the application of BRILA 2016's Inventory and Quantitative Geosite and Geodiversity and Degradation Risk Assessment of Georgetown mountain bike trail concept areas, with a particular focus on Mount George. Mount George Trail 1 in connection with Mount George Summit was further assessed for educational and touristic value potential, also applying BRILA 2016's methodology. Geotouristic potential of the landscape surrounding Mount George has also been considered, and suitable potential georistic products are outlined with examples of existing materials available for incorporation into a preferred geotouristic product are showcased throughout the presentation. Georgetown Mountain Bike Trail Site Assessment and Geotouristic Value Adding. Ya Polinga, Kanamaluka. Hello, welcome to Tamar River. I'd like to take a moment now to acknowledge traditional owners past and present on the country of which this project will be taking place. Tamar Valley in the Georgetown area is the traditional lands of the Stony Creek Nation, one of the three clans that made up the Stony Creek Nation. The Letarmarana people occupied the territory along the east bank of the Kanamaluka, where the Georgetown mountain bike concept areas are located. This image provides an overview of the two concept areas for the mountain bike trail areas in their relationship to the Georgetown and Bell Bay. Georgetown is aiming to be Tasmania's next mountain biking town, according to Flow Mountain Bike magazine online, aiming to create heavily featured trails that cater to the entire range of skill levels. Georgetown could fill the gap between Derby and Maydena with a fresh approach and a blank canvas. The project is full steam ahead with plenty of state, local and federal funding. Here's a project timeframe overview with the red star highlighting where the project is up to current ground truthing and natural and cultural assessments conducted. It'll be interesting to see the difference between this desktop analysis and the outcomes of their assessments. The majority of this project will be looking at Mount George area. Tipperary Hills does make up the majority of the footprint at 830 hectares. Forestry activities. Here's a lovely geo-referenced concept trails artwork by Dirt Art Australia. And here's the area of interest, Mount George concept area, which makes up 140 hectares. The combined trail area is 80 kilometres with an easement guess of 5 metres, which comes up to somewhere in the vicinity of 40 hectares of vegetation clearance to install the tracks. Mount George is situated at negative 41.10507 lat with the longitude of 1.146.86171. Here's track 1 as it's written up in the development proposal, feasibility study, material available on the council website. It'll be excavator constructed and it's to be a dual mountain bike / walking trail, which gives it a greater audience. Here's a lovely geo-referenced image of the concept trails designed by Dirt Art. Our track of interest is the yellow trail marked as Mount G Trail 1 on the legend there up in the left. It's overlaid into the spot imagery, which shows lovely vegetation. But as you can see when you zoom in into more recent imagery from Esri, there's been a large fire that's occurred through about a third of the footprint. This fire poses hazards for the site in terms of recovery and restoration and managing weeds and the natural site hazards of sheet erosion and landslide, landslide hazard. So here we have the first half of BRILA's Geodiversity Inventory score sheet, which covers representativeness, key locality, scientific knowledge and integrity. It's scored 0 for both key locality and scientific knowledge, which speaks to academic and international journals and literature. With representativeness, it's scored fairly highly with a weighted score of 60. It's considered to be part of a large feature, which is a doleritic landscape. It runs from Mount George at Georgetown there, and runs all the way through to Nile, where it's about 4 kilometres across places. In terms of its geological integrity, being dolerite and igneous rock, it's considered to be highly resistant. The information that has informed Barilla's inventories, various sources, including geological mapping. This is an excerpt from Mineral Resources Tas Simplified Geology Mapping. These two large orange areas refer to the doleritic range that runs through there, that covers both the concept areas. This is a simplified geology mapping for Mount George Concept Area 1 that highlights the Tasmanian dolerite formed during the Jurassic period, and the Cenozoic cover sequences that are also on the edge of the site. That is laterite derived from Jurassic dolerite. As an interpretive sign or material for an interpretive geology app or geodiversity app, here's an excerpt from the actual map itself, displaying those time periods and the formation of these features. Here's some more mapping, an image taken of some mapping, highlighting the Mount George area in the top left and the Tipperary Hills down in the bottom centre right. Some of the legend features have been highlighted here with the colours denoting degrees and the type of linear geomorphic features. So in this instance, we're looking at a sharp ridge across the top of the Mount George hill features, and the same with the Tipperary. Moving on to soil types, this doleritic landscape is dominated by Eastfield soil types. It also has a minor occurrence of what's coded as DA over here, and M10 is miscellaneous. So it's imperfectly drained. Here's the second half of the geodiversity inventory scoring. There's 0 for our geological geodiversity, as we only have one geological feature, although there are plenty of secondary elements, such as being able to talk about the soil development on a slope and with that particular geology as parent material, and how that affects land class. And it's also been identified as having landslide potential, and so that all speaks to the physical geology of the site potentially. Rarity, we scored fairly high with 2, even though it's fairly common in the region. Dolerite is nationally pretty rare and internationally fairly rare. Although Mount George is significant as it is part of the largest system for the region running through there, and it's also the most elevated, so give you the best views. Limitations to overcome to be able to use the site, and that's mainly just about asking permissions as you would normally have to do. Okay, moving on to the geoconservation. Within our 10,000 buffer zone, we will intercept Lowhead and File of My Bluff, neither of which have any geoconservation status in the state listings, but we also intercept Stony Head sandstone, which speaks to the Permian period, which is much older than the doleritic Jurassic that's displayed through this range here. So with a little bit of a stretch, we will increase our geological diversity from 1 to 2 to 3 by increasing the buffer area to 10 kilometres. There are a lot of other values of threatened flora and fauna on Tipperary Hills and Mount George. As you can see in the visual in this slide, the highlighted area is Mount George concept area. There's only 2 records of threatened flora on the edge of the site. That does not preclude there being any important species using that site or within that site. It probably just means there's been no survey work done there. Here's a shot of the Natural Values Atlas report results for the threatened fauna. As you can see, there are a lot of threatened fauna noted within 5,000 metres of the concept area, which is highlighted in the blue on the left. On the right is the range boundaries for species. The pink or highlighted species are the ones that haven't been observed on the site, which doesn't preclude them being there. It just means that either nobody's gone looking or they may not be there. This means that the site may be important habitat to these species. It also provides people the opportunity to look for those species. Here's an image of the mapping from the list, the Land Information Services Tasmania from TasVeg layer, TasVeg 3. Also has the fine lines for conservation of freshwater ecosystem values, which has a relationship with the threatened veg that is highlighted in the site area 2. As you can see, site area 1 in the top left of the screen is dominated by one particular community, which is peppermint on dolerite or Eucalyptus amygdalina. There's also a pocket of Casuarina down here with the yellow stripes in the most northern tip of the point. There is quite a lot of land clearing or vegetation clearing associated with the tracks. Here are the results for the potential geotouristic use for Mount George as a walking track with associated geotouristic features highlighted. Because of the resistant rock dolerite feature at the site and its high resistivity, it's considered a low vulnerability risk. It's got good accessibility because of the existing sealed roads and infrastructure with the boardwalks and lookouts. It has some limitations in use in that you have to veer from the new trail back onto previous existing tracks that people have used. Safety is pretty good because of all the facilities. Logistics are great in terms of being close to Georgetown and Launceston. With a low population density, or it has good associations with other values as demonstrated in the flora and fauna desktop results presented in the previous slides. Has great scenery because of the vegetation, beautiful flowers at the right times of years, orchids, great bird watching opportunities. It's fairly unique on a national scale, not so much on a local scale. It has good interpretive potential because of the vegetation dependency on the soil types and the dolerite intrusions to be discussed, and also the natural hazards and the geophysical properties of those in terms of the slip strikes and landslide hazards at the site. Rates pretty low in terms of the local economic levels and has good proximity to other features locally. So we've got a pretty good top score, which I was surprised at given what I considered a fairly mundane site. Our degradation risk came out fairly high from a potential and something. This has been informed by the land tenure and planning schemes. So the planning scheme is a little bit contradictory in that Site 1 is covered by a scenic management area under the scheme overlay has private freehold for the majority of the site identified as Camalco. The orange for the easements is public reserve, and the summit area is identified as local government. Whereas the planning scheme zoning has the area identified as general industrial, and the Tipperary Hills actually has a mining lease for gravel over the majority of it. So I'm glad I'm not the planner approving this project. The other degradation risk that was identified to inform Brilla's inventory was the landslip hazard band mapping produced by Mineral Resources Tasmania, which has a large portion, particularly along the ridge lines, of a medium hazard band. So that looks like this within the words. So it's considered to have a landslip susceptibility zone, and there is expected to be controls put on construction, particularly around pools and tanks and whatnot. There is no active landslides known for these areas, but are identified as susceptible. There's some great interpretation material that goes along with these reports that I think would make brilliant value for interp and geotouristic products, such as the geomorphological setting that describes the Tamar Valley landscape, and you could focus on the east here, which is over on the right of the image, where it talks about the slides and flows, which leads me to the results for the potential for educational use, which scored also pretty high because of the secondary features inherent with the site and its ability to be taught across all age levels. And here's another example of the interpretation material that explains what's going on in the Dollarite susceptible landslide zone. And here's a slide speaking to the geotouristic product suite that would fit into the existing landscape of the Mount George trails and other features identified in the neighbouring landscape. There's much to choose from. Thank you for your time.